Hello, my name is Richard Corbett from emergebydesign.net, and welcome to my weekly astrological and human design transit forecast starting on Monday, May 26th through Sunday, June 1st. Well, we're going to kick off this week with a new moon in Gemini on Monday evening at 9:02 Mountain Time, and we're going to take a deeper look at the symbolism in that chart. But of course, every new moon, they're like chapters in the book of our year. And there's such a wonderful time to take a few breaths, to collect ourselves, to reflect on the previous month, where we've come from, where we are now, to be present to our body, and to look forward, to think about intentions and directions that we may want to go in the coming lunar cycle. As we move through the week, we're going to see a Mercury conjunct the Sun in Gemini, and we'll finish out the week on Sunday with Venus conjunct Chiron in gate 42, line 6, the line of wisdom, the role model, and the gate of growth and evolution being activated by Chiron, the wounded healer, and Venus, the planet of our wants, desires, balance, and harmony. So, yeah, I got a fascinating week ahead and look forward to diving into that with you. So let me go ahead and pull up the charts. And while I'm doing that, just want to thank everyone for your likes and subscribes. If you get value out of these videos, I greatly appreciate your support, and we enjoy growing our community here at Emerge by Design. So as we look at the charts here, normally all of my charts are for noon Mountain Time, except for the lunations. So as we look at Monday's chart here, I do have this chart set for the exact minute of the new moon in Gemini, which is at 9:02 p.m. Mountain Time. The first thing I want to draw our attention to is the sign of Gemini. Where this new moon is taking place. We can see the sun and moon conjunct here in gate 16, line 1. But we also have Mercury pretty closely conjunct this new moon. Now, Mercury is, of course, the ruler of Gemini. So this brings an added level of importance or value, having Mercury in his home sign very closely conjunct this new moon, as well as having Jupiter still in the sign of Gemini as well. Whenever planets are passing through the sign of Gemini, they're going through many of the throat gates. All of Gemini is throat gates, except for the last few minutes of the sign where we start gate 15. And Mercury, of course, very closely associated with the throat center. Mercury is the planet of communication. But also, I like to remember how Mercury who was never far from the sun, right? He's closest planet to the sun, never more than 30 or 28 degrees away from the sun in an astrological chart. Mercury also helps us integrate this life force sun energy of our own life, right? Wherever we see our sun activation in our human design body graph or our astrological chart, Mercury is helping us to understand that, to integrate and share what we are learning in our own personal hero's journey. So we're seeing a lot of Gemini here. So as I was contemplating this new moon and looking back, which is a great thing to do at new moons to gain presence, thinking about when we had all those planets in Pisces for so long, and then Venus and Mercury went into Aries, and they went back into Pisces. We had so many gates on our solar plexus activated for so many months, and we're moving out of that phase now. Saturn recently moved into the sign of Aries over the weekend. Of course, I'll have more to share about that. And later in the year, Saturn and Neptune are going to retrograde into Pisces for a while before coming back into Aries in February. They'll cross into Aries together at 0 degrees Aries. So there's a larger pattern involved there. But what I'm sharing is that we're moved into this Arian phase now with Saturn jumping into Aries. And so we're moving into a transition phase. And I think that as we look at all the emotional stimulation we had from the past handful of months, we all may have experienced some degree of triggering or dysregulation in our personal romantic relationships, friendships, career, wherever we may look. We have seen that we've been stimulated to up-level and grow and mature within our emotional relationships. And as we're in this Gemini new moon here, I just am really feeling this opportunity in our communications with others to integrate these newfound lessons. Gemini is a sign of versatility, adaptability, and of course, communication. And so all of those themes, I think, are going to be part of this lunar cycle looking forward. Now, we also can see that with this Mercury new moon conjunction, it is trining Pluto in gate 41. And Mercury and Pluto have a very good relationship, if you will, archetypally, right? Mercury, the messenger god, was also a psychopomp. He could move into the underworld of Pluto and back to the other worlds very seamlessly and effortlessly. Mercury often was known to carry the helmet of invisibility from Pluto. And so there's this very, I want to say close, I don't know if that's the word, but a very supportive relationship whenever we're looking at Mercury Pluto aspects. Again, Mercury helps us integrate our life force energy. Often that means diving into the plutonic underworld of our own psychology, looking into our personal shadows hidden within our recesses of our past. The idea of going into the dark, scary cave to mine the personal gems that we are all here to discover within ourselves. So if that's sort of the flavor of the Mercury-Pluto archetype, here at this new moon, conjunct Mercury, it is trining Pluto. And so I think this is such a supportive time as we look back at wherever we've come from these past handful of months, how we're able now to move forward with this new sense of integration from life lessons. Now, last week, we had a lot of individual gates and channels activated. I talked about my last transit report, and we were speaking about this spectrum of the knowing circuit group, moving from knowing personal truth, inspiration, to not knowing, the uncertainty that comes with our individual circuitry, finding comfortability in the uncomfortable sense of not knowing. And so as we're moving through that and out of that into this new moon and Gemini cycle, I think that's what I'm getting at with this idea of integrating that. Right, to allowing the melancholy of uncertainty and lack of knowing to find regulation within that, to connect with our body, to hold fast in a sense, to know that that pulse of inspiration and empowerment is there. And if we're nurturing ourselves, taking care of ourselves, we can find that. And we also, I certainly want to point out, we had this in effect since last week. It's still here at the time of the new moon, but the channel of initiation, right? This is an invitation to personal mutation being activated by Saturn and Neptune in gate 25, which we're going to have mostly for the rest of the year into January and February next year. Even when they go retrograde, Saturn will bounce back into gate 36 for a few weeks. But for many months now, we're getting Saturn and Neptune in gate 25, and we had Venus move into gate 51 last week. So this is the final day on Monday that this channel will be activated. Venus will move on to gate 42 by tomorrow's chart, you will see in a moment. But just want to definitely highlight that we have still this channel of initiation at the time of this new moon. And if we think about the new moon itself in gate 16, I want to drill down on gate 16 a little bit more. This is found over here in the throat center. It's part of the channel of the wavelength, a design of talent. It's part of logical circuitry. And the heart of logical circuitry is the splenic awareness center. This center of our intuition, our immune system, and how we can use our fears to up-level health, wellness, and sustainability. So this channel of the wavelength speaks to the idea of mastery, recognizing patterns, doing things over and over to improve the pattern so that we can achieve some sense of mastery. And that is expressed through gate 16, the gate of skills. So there again, I'm thinking about all of this emotional volatility that we've been going through, and now we're meeting this new cycle here where they're saying there's something to discover here. There's something logical through our emotional patterns of relationships in our life that we may now be integrating into our new truth of expression, inspiration, self-empowerment. This is a great month to contemplate these things. These are great questions for each of us to think about. Where have I grown and developed in my emotional interaction with others? And have I improved my own rhythm and patterns of logical sharing with others and loved ones, or even just in the workplace, of course. But really appreciating this gate 16. And we are going to have Mercury conjunct the sun, as you'll see in a few slides when we get to Thursday. But at the time of the new moon, they're close enough to be considered a conjunction, and really want to emphasize that trine to Pluto, really helping us dig down into the depths of our being, and Pluto being in gate 41, sharing with all of us that we are being pressurized to start a new cycle of experiential development. And we want to carry forward all of these lessons and life experiences we've gone through this year so far. Such a wild astrological year of stimulation, all of that pointing us back into ourselves to find our own sense of creativity. Gemini, this new moon, a wonderful catalyst and support to sink into our creativity, right? Thinking of versatility, adaptability, being curious to life. Life is certainly presenting lots of chaos in the external global environment right now. And I think it's a wonderful contemplation for us to think about, who am I becoming in spite or as a result of all of these happening in our world? What we're being called upon is to be ourselves, to be ruthlessly honest, authentic, and sincere about who we are and where our energy wants to move us to access our own creative inspiration. So I think this new moon really powerful in that regard. Additionally, we can say, to draw another aspect of symbolism here, is that Mercury is sextile Saturn. As I mentioned, Saturn just a couple of days ago moved into the sign of Aries. Saturn, the taskmaster, the planet of discipline, hard work, hard knocks, most importantly, maturity. Developing maturity and building structures of maturity in Aries now, the spark, the initiator, the fire to get things going. Along with Neptune, the planet of imagination, dreams, illusions, fantasies, limitless possibility is Neptune. So such a fascinating conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in gate 25, the spirit of the higher self, the gate of innocence. And so I think that's such a strong undercurrent, not only of this first new moon since Saturn has gotten into Aries. I think that is very significant. So it's kind of giving us a precursor or a sign of what's to come, because we're going to have that formation for so many months going forward right now. But this idea of how we're cultivating innocence, this idea of loving life without preconditions, without expectations, more sinking into acceptance and innocence and play, right? Approaching life with the curiosity of a young child, where, releasing some of our judgments, I would say. And when we're dealing with logical circuitry, as we are with gate 16, we do have the archetype in gate 17 of opinions. Mars in a couple of days here is going to move into gate 4, part of logical circuitry. So yeah, we're getting this the sense of judgment, because judgment is part of how we judge patterns. But again, I want to encourage us to contemplate that full spectrum. It's also the releasement of judgment or someone else's patterns. It's more about, what is my pattern of health, wellness, and sustainability? And I think these are all supportive contemplations for this new moon, and fascinated by this Saturn Neptune. They're not going to be conjunct until February of next year, but they're going to be traveling hand in hand as they traverse gate 25, forward, backward, and forward again. I just want to again remind us that this contemplation of, how am I approaching life? Am I holding the steering wheel tight, or am I accepting life, appreciating the health and wellness that I have or am working on, in not only my personal physical well-being, but in all areas of life, both relationships, career, and so forth. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there for that new moon. We'll go ahead and move into Tuesday, the 27th. Now on Tuesday, Mercury will be exactly trine that Pluto. So again, this is a very supportive aspect with Mercury-Pluto, Mercury being in gate 20 in the throat center, the gate called the gate of the now. It's an existentialism. This is the voice that says, I am now, I am here now, I am totally present to my being. And with that trine and Pluto, again, it's this idea that there's things we've been through so far this year that we can now work with. We can integrate these lessons to feel a greater sense of fulfillment and connection to our true authenticity and power. So that's the main aspect I wanted to mention for Tuesday, as well as Venus has moved out of that gate 51. I mentioned that, and is now in gate 42, which is where Chiron is. Now, Chiron doesn't get an activation in the human design body graph, but I always like to look at where Chiron is. Such an important planet that really embodies the idea of the hero's journey. Chiron has been in gate 42 for many months. They're going to be conjunct on Sunday, so I'll say more about that then. But all week long, we have Venus closing in on this conjunction. So they're already both in gate 42 as of Tuesday, and this is the gate of growth. It's part of the format channel of abstract circuitry. And the heart of abstract circuitry is our solar plexus, the seat of our emotions and feelings and experiential growth development leading to maturity. And so with Chiron and Venus traveling together the rest of the week, another great contemplation is how are we finding balance, Venus, love, harmony, and beauty within this cycle of development. We know from Pluto in 41 that we are all, as a species, beginning a new cycle of development and experience. But here with Venus and Chiron the rest of this week, particularly as they're closing in a conjunction, to reflect on how have I grown? How have I evolved? How have I let things go that are no longer serving me, not only my health, but my spiritual growth, and so forth, all referring back to gate 25, Saturn and Neptune, the spirit of higher self. How are we touching on that? I mentioned Jupiter briefly because he's in Gemini at the time of the new moon, but he's in gate 12. We talked about that last week. We still have Uranus in gate 8, and now with Mercury in gate 20, once again, we have 3 out of 4 individual circuit group throat gates activated. So listening to our communications with others, are we hearing truth? Are we hearing comfortability even in the spaces of not knowing, right? It's quite a thing to be comfortable in the unknown. But I think the transits are really encouraging us to learn to accept that. We are living in interesting times. There is no getting around that. But rather being caught up in the fear, doubt, and insecurity of that is using that energy and that frequency to build up confidence, to find the uniqueness that is truly ours and how we might share that with the world. I really think that it's our individuality, our unique creativity that will be the currency of the future. Our systems are changing. There's no getting around that. So again, using that stimulation to find solace and emotional inner security from our authenticity and creativity. And those 3 individual gates that are activated this week can help us as we listen to our story. How are we sharing it? We all know that sense of being the victim, being overwhelmed and overcome by life circumstances, but there's tremendous support for healing this week. And I think these are some fair winds at our back for that type of process. Okay, let's go ahead and move it into Wednesday, the 28th. And on Wednesday, the moon, you can see here at this noontime chart, has just moved into her home sign of Cancer. So she's bringing all of her emotional spectrum and resources to be focused on family, emotional security, and the moon at that time, as the moon moves into Cancer, forming a square with Saturn still at 0 degrees of Aries. Now, this is going to be the first what we call hard aspects that Saturn is getting, having moved into the sign of Aries. So again, we're sort of getting a preview of the future here. Now, this is a fast-moving transit with the moon. The square is really only in orb or in effect for about a half of a day on Wednesday, but it is sort of a preview. And I think what we're looking at here, the symbolism I see with the moon in gate 15 in the G center, this is called the gate of extremes. It's also called the love of humanity. And we think about the extreme uniqueness of the human species. Everybody's so different and has different extreme natures, is the idea that we can still love everyone, that we can cultivate this love of humanity. And that moon in gate 15, it is squaring Saturn in gate 25. So how do we learn to love humanity and to experience more of the gifts of gate 15? Well, it's to find personal innocence with our own approach to life. Right? Again, that idea of not having expectations and preconditions, to accept what life offers us, to know that the, divine orchestration of the universe is here for us. It's not against us. Even though we can have Saturnian challenges and limitations, all of those are steps towards growth and emotional development. So anyway, a little bit of a taste of that with the moon square Saturn. Also on Wednesday, Mars is going to move into the Ajna Center, into gate 4. This is called the gate of formalization. Oh, sorry, I switched the chart there. Gate 4. Mars is very confident and works well, obviously, with the fire sign of Leo. But we may see out there in the world this Mars aggression energy in the gate of answers, right? It's part of that logical circuitry again. So we might be hearing this opinionated ideas out there. But again, I think with these other transits I've already mentioned and the gates activated, we can have our own opinion, but can we also accept and appreciate other people's opinion, even if we don't agree with them? Cultivating that sense of innocence allows us to have our personal space and allow others to have their space as well. And then lastly, I want to mention that Mercury, on its moving towards that conjunction with the sun, is going to move into gate 16. So for the rest, at least through Saturday, and the exact conjunction will be tomorrow's chart. I'll show you in just a moment on Thursday. But yeah, here we have Mercury and the sun traveling through that gate 16 I already spoke about. So again, this is a building getting very strong, only 2 degrees apart right now. But here again, contemplating, this is a great time for reflecting, thinking, sharing with loved ones what we've been through, how we have grown, how we're finding a greater sense of versatility and adaptability in these very changing times. Again, I'm getting this sense with my own words that, I'm really encouraging us all to contemplate, where have we been rigid? Where have we been constricted? Where we've tightened up, closed our heart, right? These are self-defeating reactions to do that. But here, this gate 25 is asking us, open our heart, to expand, right? To grow the scope of our vision, more bandwidth, due to versatility and adaptability promotes all that. So I think that Mercury Sun traveling together for these next few days is really supporting that idea. Okay, we'll go into Thursday, the 29th. And here we do have, as I mentioned, that exact conjunction between Mercury and the sun. They actually conjunct in gate 16, line 4, and then they move very closely together into line 5. Right, the conjunction is around 10 p.m. on Thursday, and then by the next morning, they're both in line 5 as well. This line of universalization of skills and mastery, and what is our personal truth of inspirational self-empowerment that we're working on. What are we cultivating? We're at the very beginning stages still of this lunar cycle, and so it's a the moon is growing in emotional luminosity, and so are we as we move forward. How are we cultivating this idea? How are we moving toward our own sense of mastery as we settle into the rhythm that supports our growth and development of up-leveling health, wellness, and sustainability? I think that's a great contemplation moving through this week. Excuse me, we'll go ahead and move into Friday. And on Friday, I want to point out that Mercury has just passed the conjunction, of course, that happened on Thursday, but they're still very close together. And they are both forming a half square with the Venus Chiron closing conjunctions, this little half square between Mercury and Sun in gate 16 and Venus and Chiron in that gate 42. So yeah, I'm really appreciating this Venus, and again, it's 2 degrees away. It's going to be exact on Sunday. So it's in these final couple of days that we may feel this frequency the most. And I hope that we could all look towards some sense of growth and development that we can recognize, that we can self-validate, that we can appreciate about ourselves, right? But we're not caught in that victim finger pointing game. Never helpful, right? It's very stifling, and again, it's very constrictive. But with Venus, the planet of what we want, right? We love the balance, the harmony, the tranquility that Venus always is sharing in her bounty, lining up with our sense of our wounded healer, the wounded self, and how these cycles of development have brought us hard-earned maturity. Well, with the Sun Mercury squaring that, it could be challenged. An experience or a conversation is going to test us on that maybe on this Friday. We'll just see about that. But just to know that life is always inviting us to discover more of who we are and what gives us that juice, that self-empowerment, that we are engaged with life, finding self-love and love of life. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the symbolism this week really is asking us, are we accepting, right? Where are we finding innocence? Playful curiosity, innocence, I think can be really, really supportive as we move through these times, and particularly this week. All right, we'll move it into Saturday, May 31st. And the shift is coming here on today. We have Mercury leaving at gate 16, where he was traveling with the Sun, moving into gate 35. Now, the North Node is still in gate 36, been there for a couple of months, has retrograded back to 36 line 2. So with Mercury moving into gate 35, we are getting the channel of transitoriness. Now, this gate 35 is called the gate of progress. It's sharing how we feel about where we are in this cycle of growth and development. So it's sounding like a wonderful time for communication, right? And listening. I think that's really the key. When we speak, sometimes we do it so unconsciously, but if we can really tune into our frequency, are we hearing the hero of our journey, our personal story, archetype of the hero? The appreciation for the battle scars that we may have, emotional scars and traumas that we've been through. But for Mercury to be in that gate 35 right now, so coincidental, right? As Venus is joining up with Chiron in the 42. Just a really wonderful week to check in with ourselves on this new lunar cycle of emotional growth and development. Where are we? How would we feel about the progress we've made? And certainly no blame or shame. If we're like, you know what, I haven't gotten anywhere yet, that's okay. These transits this week are saying, we can do it. We can move along on this path one step at a time, staying regulated within our body. If you'd like some wonderful tips from my partner, Brandy Jordan, you can check out her somatic toolbox at emergebydesign.net. Very supportive physical tips on how to integrate, how to connect with our body at a deeper level, always wanting to strengthen our relationship with our personal authority, our voice of truth. Wonderful week for all of that work, for sure. And let's go ahead and we'll take it into Sunday. We'll wrap the week up here. Now, on Sunday, the Sun is going to move into gate 35. Along with Mercury, right? So we'll start off next week with the first quarter moon with Mercury, Sun in gate 35, but this gate of progress, this puts the Earth in the polarity in gate 5, coming out of the sacral center, part of the channel of rhythm. And so again, because we're in a new cycle of emotional growth and development, the idea of waiting for our life force energy to move into a healthy pattern of wellness, inner security, emotional regulation, all of these things I think are on tap for next week. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we can see with that Chiron Venus, that exact conjunction is taking place on Sunday. So I think for Sunday, a wonderful day just to spend a few moments and think about that, where we're at on our healing journey, how far we've come to release the limitations of what some of these traumatic or stimulating circumstances can bring us, and how we're moving, integrating that experience and moving beyond it now. Again, with this strong Gemini energy this week, it may feel like we're sort of getting somewhere. We're going places. This is mutable air, lots of exchange. It's a cauldron of energy in that sense. And things can happen very rapidly, right? Change can happen rapidly with all this Gemini energy. So I think with all the symbolism, and then lastly, just to mention too, that on this noontime chart on Sunday, while the Venus is exactly conjunct Chiron, the moon in Aries conjunct Mars is trining that energy. And the moon herself is in gate 29 in the sacral center. This is the gate of saying yes to emotional discovery, right? That every time we go through a new experience, a new relationship, we are saying yes to a new cycle of development, and we may discover something, but along the way, we want to be present to our body, not yearning or stuck in the past or hoping for the future, but just present to where we are, present to the next breath. And I think Sunday being a beautiful day for that. So I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Again, thank you all so much for joining me for these reports. I always appreciate your comments as well. I love your encouragement. Motivates me to want to keep doing these. So thank you for joining me. Have a great week and a great new moon. Bye for now.